you need to think about political parity, the power of political parity. So if you raise the Council on Sustainable Development, if you raise the issue to Council level, you need to do something about the environmental level, because you need to have equilibrium. You cannot have one part of the EU when dealing with environment at top-notch political level, and then the environmental issues way down in the hierarchy. You need to have it established on par with each other. And then, if you get WHO, ILO, the other issues dealing with social issues, reporting to the Council, you then just force the World Bank, IMF, IFCs, the regional banks, to report into the Council on Sustainable Development and Green Economy. And the second pillar is taken care of. And then you have the specialized agency called UNEP reporting in on environmental measures. And then you actually have the three pillars dealt with by the Council on Sustainable Development. It's one way of thinking about this. I kept repeating it because you need also to think beyond the institution of the UN and strengthening this at all levels. And this is where the countries are important. You know, this is where an idea that can come out needs to be distilled into the national context, and this is where civil society is good. You take the inspiration from Rio and then put it at work at home. So these are some of the areas identified as emerging issues. So they talked about food security, climate security, energy security, water security, ecosystem security. This is part of the so-called security discussion we've had. The need to have a safe and sound environment on these issues. So then the idea is to have design and develop a system which can handle emerging issues and which can actually strengthen the emerging issues such as these and deal with them in a sensible way. This is no easy thing to do. Then there are 3 or 4 or 5 proposals that have been developed by different civil society bodies. One is the proposal to elevate Principle 10 to either a regional or a global convention. Principle 10 of Rio is about access to information. And access to information and participation is crucial if you want to have good governance and really influencing the decision. World Resources Institute, a big think tank NGO in Washington, D.C., through what is known as the Access Initiative. If you Google Access, as spelled Access, you'll find a lot of information on this. Interestingly enough, it looks like Latin America is going to have a regional convention coming out of Rio on the Access Initiative. The operating convention of this, if you're really interested in elements of this, is known as the Aarhus Convention. A-R-H-U-S, Aarhus, named after a town in Denmark where it was signed. It's not an abbreviation. So this is one idea. If you like it, you can subscribe to it, or you can take it and work with it. The World Resources Institute is looking exclusively at a regional element. You might want to do it on a global level. There is work underway between Stakeholder Forum and the Brazilian Association of NGOs to develop a convention on corporate social responsibility. And this is based on the discussion that took place around the ISO 26000. It's very interesting to see if this can come up to a framework convention level. ISO 26000 is voluntary. A framework convention is mandatory. Then the ETC group, and if you want to know more about the ETC group, Ned can talk about that, is developing a very interesting idea around what I would call a precautionary principle on bioengineering, nanotechnology, having something that is assessing new and emerging technologies. All of these 3 ideas fall under the governance and strengthening the institutional architecture. So this is a lot of NGOs that have been specifically thinking, how can we propose new ideas that have relevance to the agenda? This is one way of doing this.
Is it bio or geo?
And the interesting thing is that it's getting traction, yes.
Is it bio or geoengineering?
What is it, Net? Is it bioengineering or geoengineering? I spelled it wrong, sorry, my mistake. Or as they say in America, eloquently, my bad. So, and then I think it's very, very important to develop a visionary document on how the world should look like, complete with concepts, visions, etc. And this is where civil society is good. Where is our document that actually talks about the future in a world? This is where you can actually help build the chapeau, the introductory chapter. Because the introductory chapter is open-ended. And I think the government of Brazil and a number of other governments are looking for good ideas. So if it can be visionary, creative, thinking about the world in 2030, and come up with some good stuff there, I think we're doing well. Now, finally, this is the last element of my talk, is the Sustainable Development Goals, which came, which was brought onto the international agenda 2 months ago by Colombia, supported by Guatemala, and substantial rumor has it that it was basically drafted by Brazil. Be that as it may, it's an interesting thing. It's a document and a page-and-a-half document, and you find it again under UNDESA, where you go down to see there's an icon where you can see the activities of different countries, and they're beautifully organized in alphabetic order with flags. And you find Colombia, you click on that, you get this very interesting document. I'll just pick up a few things there. So it's Colombia, Guatemala developed a proposal as a contribution to the outcome document. They're very specific on what they do. So it's targeted. It's got the right language approach. They propose this as an outcome document, and they say an agreement of a suite of sustainable development goals, similar and supportive of the MDGs. Similar and supportive of. They're not discarding the MDGs, but they're not saying that they are a continuation or a further development of MDGs, so it's different. The SDGs could provide a logical sequence and structure to the process launched almost 20 years ago. See, they're picking up agreed language. They're picking up what is mentioned in the introductory chapters to the Framework Convention on the Resolution on Green. And they're picking up also and actually taking into identifying the gaps, the shortcomings, and the good examples. So it's a brilliantly crafted document. We could consider identifying goals in order to better identify, see here it comes, gaps and needs, and provide for more structure and implementation of the principles and goals defined 20 years ago. If you go back and you read the resolutions that we need to identify how to deal with the gaps and the challenges. So they cover that. So by June 2012, have defined a suite of these development objectives. What do they say? They say in the context of a balanced, sustained socio-economic growth. This is green economy. But this is green economy in the context of Latin America. I think we could say green economy, but they don't want to do it. It's consistent with the outcome of the Latin American regional meeting. Cross-cutting building blocks for development throughout the UN system. So it has relevance for all UN elements. And then they say something which is interesting. So they said, define internationally, the SDGs would serve both for comparing results as well as furthering opportunities for cooperation, including South. And then they go on. The SDGs and the MDGs should be fully complementary. Very important. Second, it's worth noting that while the MDGs applied only to developing countries, the SDGs should have universal application. Now, having been very familiar with G77 language for I don't know how many years, where they have consistently said this is South, not North. They say universal application, which is interesting. And I like this because it's going back to the origin, the original mandate of the UN, which is a universal organization. What they do applies to everybody. And this is also telling my country to get their act together. Telling Sweden to comply, France to comply, not only Africa or Asia or Latin America. I think it's a breakthrough in thinking. What else? They talk about measurable progress. Now, we don't throw out these principles like that, but we want to use measurable progress, and they go in and I said, let's see where it says. It's coming because what I'm saying, they're picking up the experience from the NDGs on all the elements of measurable progress, of the factors, etc., etc. So they're leaning on the NDG experience and then taking that into the SDGs, which is looking forward. And then another thing which is important, all of this would avoid reopening debate on Agenda 21. Some countries early in this process said, we need to reopen Agenda 21, we need to revisit it and make it stronger or weaker. We don't like it, certain parts of it. They say no. We don't reopen it, we accept this document as it is, and it's a brilliant way of framing this when they say this. We don't want to reopen the discussion here, let's move forward. By using the, oh yeah, here it comes. The process should result in the definition of a small number of key objectives that could later be elaborated through a suite of targets, much like the MDGs. So they're picking up the experience, saying that we didn't completely fulfill the mandate of the MDGs, but the experience, lots of good things. And then they say, broadly include issues such as, and then they decide, as the UN says, inter alia, among others, which means it's open-ended, combating poverty, changing consumption patterns, promoting sustainable human settlement development, biodiversity in forests, oceans, water resources, advancing food security, energy including from renewable resources. It's much like the sectoral approach to green economy. You see, they don't go far apart, these things. So there is not only a thought behind this, it's a brilliant thought behind this. And then two-pronged results, a definition of the thematic objectives, and an agreement on a mandate to subsequently define whether these goals would be at global, regional, or national level, how the goal might reflect integration of 3 pillars in each objective. In each objective there's 3 pillars, and then interlinkages with the objective themselves. So they're using the whole jargon of sustainable development talk and discussion, the experience of 20 years of work on this, and they're trying to say, maybe this is something that we can do in 2030. Maybe it's got relevance. What is interesting about all these suggestions, these 3 ideas from civil society on the conventions and this, is that they're framework bodies. And as Shah has said repeatedly, I don't want an organization, I don't want a conference that sits down and negotiate on language. We want broad agreement on frameworks. So framework conventions, framework ideas, overarching ideas. This is what they're looking for. And the Columbia Initiative really fits into this category. And the second one is a process that could converge with the revision of the MDGs in 2015. So they say there's an ongoing work here. We don't stop in 2012. This is post-Rio, 2015, and then onward. Let's look at the future here with what we know. So, just at the very end, just recently, the high-level panel on sustainable development recently discussed, and you know the high-level panel, which was appointed by Ban Ki-moon, with eminent persons ranging in age from Gro Harlem Brundtland to Connie Hedegaard, the young former Minister of Environment in Denmark, and it's chaired by the President of South Africa, Zuma. They discussed the planetary boundaries. They took it on board. Interesting idea. They talked about the Council for Sustainable Development, principles of equity, a global sustainable development economy. They didn't talk about the green economy, but they talked about this. Energy, a possible forum or a council, and they talked about non-state actors. You see, the language is moving in the direction we want it to move. And so the result of all our push, all our strong statements, time and again, does pay off. We go home and we think, another CSD, another UNEP, another COP, does it matter? Yes, it does. Lalonde, one of the 2 executive, co-executive coordinators working with Shah, recently, actually at the end of the Latin American meeting, he summed up and said that 4 important issues: social security, energy security, agricultural security, and sustainable cities. then you see the same language coming up. They sort of, it's like this body of discussion now is coming together, which is interesting.
May I intervene on a very small point? The major part of the population of the world lives in rural areas, and that is completely missed out.
Except for the land tenure discussion. It is one of the segments of the green economy under a sectoral approach. It is one. But you see, this is a point that you need to make. You can go into the real process and where is this reflected? Where are the small farmers reflected? This is where you have a job to do.
Because all this time we have been arguing for small farmers, we've been arguing for rural development,
Yes?
and I see not even a mention of it.
Well, in the discussion going on, but there is time. And we must not give up. You know, it's never too late. If you give me 2 more, I'm just finishing.
This is the 4 point or the summary of the high
No,
level panel.
it's from Brice Lalonde. Brice Lalonde, in his own capacity, said this is what I think is important. But the man is key.
At the Rio Plus 20 or high level panel, this was 4 point.
No, Brice Lalonde is one of the 2 executive coordinators. It's Secretary General Shah is on top.
Yeah, I know.
You've got Brice Lalonde and Elizabeth Thompson. And he said this is something that I feel strongly about.
About G20.
Brice Lalonde said that.
Yeah, I know. It's about G20. These 4 issues.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, I'm just summarizing what I have picked up from key people, and what I find interesting is that there seems to be a synthesizing process going on. Shah said in Beijing, employment creation is important to focus on, and a framework for SCP can be a contribution to green economy transition. He's talking about the green economy the way we heard this morning, and this was Shah just 2 weeks ago. So, you know, these things keep coming up and up and up. The question is, do we want to embrace this, or do we want to challenge it? How do we challenge it? You know, this is what we're trying to say. Get a strategy together. So, this is the overarching roadmap. We've got from now until the 1st of November to input to the negotiating document from civil society. All stakeholders are invited, alone or together. You've got a few more days to go. After that, just remember, it has to be relevant to the agenda points. It can be developed nationally and globally. Stakeholders together. It's an incredibly generous invitation, and it's unique. From now until November 1st, from the middle of December, when we probably will get some inclination of what this is all about, until mid-January, December, January, because that's when the zero document is made public, and then until June. And in June is the Rio conference. And then, of course, the next phase is post-Rio. What do we do with this? And as I said, as a fantastic woman came up to me after one of my lectures, she said, you don't understand, it's too late to be a pessimist. And I think that's true. And it's what? Yes, I think that. You know, there's so many discussions on optimism and pessimism, and I think we usually say the one where the bottle is halfway or half full or half empty. And I have the other one is when the optimist says, this is a fantastic world, says the optimist. And the pessimist is afraid that the optimist is right. So, that's it.